Well, good evening. We're here at Bethel Baptist Chapel in Holywell, in North Wales, and we're continuing on in our study through the Bible in 1 year. It's still less than a year, so we're on track in some form or another, but we are in lesson 12 this week. In terms of what the book says, I think we had one extra lesson inserted there. But anyways, we're on lesson 12, page 59, and we're going to be going through 1st and 2nd Chronicles, which is easy having done Samuel and Kings. And we're going to find really the difference is going to be emphasis. There's different details, but let's jump into this study tonight. So let's see. So the books, again, having gone through the books of Samuel and Kings, we will not need to go into more than an overview of Chronicles. There's certainly some key things to point out. They are a chronicle, and he gives us a good definition here. And a chronicle is an account of events arranged in order. Which takes us from Adam to Nehemiah. We'll explain that Adam part in a little bit more detail when we get there. Not a lot, but just to help you when you're looking at it. Because we're going to see the first 9 chapters are basically an extended genealogy of the nation of Israel. And also the main events of the Davidic kingdom to the time of the Babylonian captivity. So we will end with the nation going into the Babylonian captivity. In fact, I might jump in right now, if we turn to 2 Chronicles 36:16, Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings. If there is a verse that covers this book, this is it. Anyone want to read that for me?
For they mocked the messengers of God and despised his words and misused his prophets, until the wrath of the Lord arose against his people, till there was no remedy. So, those words, those are frightening words. When God says there is no remedy, well, there was a remedy, and it was going to be judgment. And again, judgment not just to punitively do it, but to correctively do that. The goal of God's judgment in this sense, and for the nation that's his nation, is to bring them back into fellowship and right relationship with him. And so that will be it. So the central message of 1 and 2 Chronicles, again, this is one book that was broken up into 2 for convenience. In fact, we'll see a little bit more, maybe even longer than that. But the focus is the temple, the house of the Lord. That's really what's going to be clearly in sight. For example, these books will deal with the matters of the temple not mentioned in Samuel or Kings. For 1 Chronicles 11 to the end will give us the reign of David and his preparation for the building of the temple. And then 2 Chronicles 2 through 9 gives the account of the reign of Solomon and the building of the temple. And that'll take us to the pinnacle of Israel's status as a nation. And then the books will deal solely with Judah and Jerusalem, often called Zion. And if we look at Romans 11:26, I'll skip over that reference. But we see these are interchangeable terms because that is the kingdom and the city where the temple was built. So we'll find the temple was a symbol of the unity of the nation. It was where they gathered 3 times a year at least to observe certain festivals. It's where daily prayer was going up before the nation. So it was a symbol of the unity of the nation. It was a reminder of the nation's high calling. And as a sign that Jehovah was still with his chosen people. In relation to Samuel and Kings, Samuel and Kings are more biographical. Chronicles will be more statistical. We'll find out about that. Samuel and Kings are more personal. Chronicles are more official. Yep. In the accounts of the kings, we'll see that. Samuel and Kings give a history of both Israel and Judah after the division of the kingdom. Chronicles will only see the history of Judah after the division. So once the apostates peel off and they set up their apostate worship system in the north, they are really off the charts. Samuel and Kings emphasize the throne. Chronicles emphasizes the temple. And we'll see that clearly in focus. Chronicles goes back and reviews a history of a people to apply a vital lesson for them and for us, namely that a nation's response to God is a decisive factor in history. And he'll take that as one of the key themes of this book. Yes, the central message is the temple, but the key theme is the nation's response to God is decisive. decisive factor in history. Its history. I will say this, in terms of this focus, I'll hold it up and then I'll read it. We will find Samuel and Kings' political history of Israel and Judah. Chronicles will be the religious history. Again, it's focusing on the temple. Samuel will see a moral, prophetic viewpoint, whereas we're going to look at the spiritual, priestly viewpoint. I'll back these up with some statistics here in a minute. And then finally, Samuel and Kings will center on the history of the people and the kings. And we're going to see in Chronicles that really does focus on the temple. For the first two books, if you see the word sin, 25 and 75, 100 times in the first two books, only 19 in Chronicles. Prophet, we'll see the prophets, the ministries of the prophets extensively in the Kings and Samuel. Prophet used some 100 times in those books, or only 30 times in Chronicles. But now let's turn this around. Because we're talking about the temple and the activities of the temple, priest appears 111 times in Chronicles alone, and it's 113 times in the other two books. Levites, which would be one of the subset of those, the priestly, not the subset of the tribes, or the priestly tribe, is only used 3 times in the other two books, 100 times in Chronicles. And the Levites will have specific functions. And then the temple and the tabernacle, only 26 times in the first two books, 32. The house of God, that specific title, used 0 times. In the prior two books, it'll be used 36 times. So there is this emphasis, and it comes out. What I'll probably do is throw that up on the screen, so you'll be able to, if you want to copy that now, with the overall flow of things. And again, just when we look at history, 1 Chronicles covers the same ground as 1 and 2 Samuel, while 2 Chronicles covers 1 and 2 Kings. That old little bit there, just kind of remind the time frame as we're reading through things. All right. He brings us in. So in relation to Ezra and Nehemiah, these books, Chronicles, Ezra, and Nehemiah, originally, they believe are one great history. And this is confirmed by the termination of Chronicles. It ends very abruptly there. It's really an unfinished sentence, which will be finished in Ezra 1:3. I'm going to take a peek at that. I guess that's probably a good thing to do. Ezra. So the Chronicles ends in verse 23. Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath the Lord God of heaven given me, and he hath charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people? The Lord his God be with him. Let him go up. And we go to verse 3. Boom. Who is there among you of all his people? His God be with him. So that same verse picks up there. And you can even rewind there. The first couple of verses now, the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia. Chapter 1 of Ezra, verse 1. Verse 22 of Chronicles 36. Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia. And I'm not going to pull it all apart there, but we see a parallel account. So a lot believe that it's Nehemiah that was responsible for writing all of this, and I'll leave it there. A thought, though, when we look at a book, and I like this emphasis of another author who does an Old Testament survey, is who were the original recipients of this book? And it's going to be the people that were released, redeemed out of the Babylonian captivity. They're going to be the ones coming back. When you see Ezra and Nehemiah, those two will give us very clearly, since that seems to be the end of it if it was Nehemiah writing it. And so that's going to be the group receiving that. And kind of analogous to the Pentateuch, the people receiving that whole collection were the ones that were going into the Promised Land. And to know the history and how God works would have been very important. And for this group, it's very similar. To know certain things would have been very important. Certainly, why did we end up dispersed? Why is our land in shambles? And but also that God is faithful. So he shows us a very, very high level structure of the book, and that's probably good. I'm going to hit at a high level, and then we'll talk through it. But we see 1 Chronicles, basically it's David's reign, and we'll see basically a genealogy in the first 9 chapters. We'll see David's reign, the ark brought to Jerusalem, and the covenant with the Lord, and then his focus on the temple of the Lord, all that David will do. David's not allowed to build it, but he is going to make sure everything that can be done will be done within his charge from the Lord. Then 2 Chronicles, we'll see Solomon pick it up. He'll have a 40-year reign. That'll span 9 chapters in the rise and fall of Solomon, as it were. And then we'll see Judah's history to the captivity, chapters 10 to 36. So don't really need to pull that apart any more than that. So the view above the structure here, a view of the above structure. Here we go. So the people of the Lord, chapters 1 through 9. I'll read what he has to say, and I'm going to add just a little bit to it, maybe to put a little punch on it. So this is a genealogy for certain, but there's more for us to see. We're to first see a family tree of certain people, the people of Jehovah. The stock of Adam shoots out 3 great branches, Japheth, Ham, and Shem. And the great purpose of God is the oldest is passed over, and Shem, the youngest, is chosen to be kind of the promised line. So is Abram, the youngest son of Terah, chosen. So is Isaac over Ishmael. I didn't realize there was so many until you put them all back to back. And so is Jacob over Esau. God's going to have his order regardless of traditions. And all of this is in chapter 1. Chapter 2, the redemptive line goes through Jacob to Judah, Jesse to David. And chapter 3, the Davidic line continues down to the last of Judah's kings. And then the writer reviews the genealogy of the tribes of Israel and their allotments in Canaan. All that's good. Chapters 4 through 8. Again, this is a nation going back into, actually what they do in chapter 9. We're going to see who was who in Jerusalem. And some see this as more than just a history lesson and a reminder of things, but what was their place in the land? They're going back to occupy. What were the records that said who was supposed to be where, who was okay to serve? Again, the priests, they had a very detailed list. Only those that were properly traceable priests would be able to serve and in the high capacities. I think they were allowed to do some very peripheral things, but none of the central functions. So really the thought of this, and it's 9 chapters of genealogies, it will make your eyes glaze over. But there is a structure to it. If you do read through that, you want to see the structure, grab a good Bible commentary. I've got the layout here, or give me a call when you're reading it, and I'll send you the layout. But it does systematically work through things. We see, as he said, the lineage of David, and there is the key thought. That line of David is important. The Messiah is going to be coming through that line. The 12 tribes are important. What's interesting, 2 of the 12 tribes are not seen in here. Dan and Zebulun are not seen here. No real reason given. By the way, those of you who remember the little flash in the pan, the prayer of Jabez years ago, it comes out here just a short little prayer, and it was turned into a multi-million-pound merchandising effort. But the last kind of thing, we'll also see Saul. We'll have Saul's descendants. We'll see that reign, although Saul is not of the tribe of Judah. So, and again, particularly in chapter 9, you see the citizens of Jerusalem listed, the political leaders, the priests, the Levites, the gatekeepers, and others. And this would have helped in their present state, as of the writing of the book, again, to know as they came back that they had a place and they had a legitimate place. And so we look at genealogy sometimes, we scratch our head. This one happens to be, I think, one of the more clearly well-defined ones because of the nation's situation and what it provides us. Okay, that'll get you to chapter 9. Then we'll see the anointed of the Lord. And here begins the reign of David, the anointed of the Lord, and how he made Jerusalem the capital when he was made king. And he was the king of divine choice, whereas Saul was the king of human choice. If we want to read 1 Chronicles 10:14.
He inquired not of the Lord, therefore he slew him, and turned the kingdom unto David, the son of Jesse.
So Saul, people wanted something bad. They wanted a king bad. They got a bad king. And then God's choice. Although God did choose Saul, you can't deny that. But he was a choice after what the people would desire. And it all was on his stature, his looks, his appearance, whereas David had a heart after the Lord. All right, so chapters 13 through 16, we'll see the first outstanding recorded act of David will be bringing the ark of the Lord to Jerusalem. And that basically would mean the presence of Jehovah would be there in Jerusalem. And we'll see in chapter 15 will be the ultimate part there where the ark is brought to Jerusalem and God blesses David. I want to turn to the first part of chapter 15 though, 1:15, because if you know the story of the ark, this is a case where between the accounts in Samuel and Kings and then over in Chronicles, in this case it would be Kings and then Chronicles, we get the complete picture of what's going on. And as you recall, the first time he tried to bring the ark up, they had set it on a brand new cart, and it was being pulled by the nicest animals you've ever seen, and they hit a bump, and they go to stable the ark, and the guy gets killed and stables it. Well, was never supposed to be on a cart. It's supposed to be borne on the shoulders of the particular tribe of Levi, within the tribe of Levi, that had the responsibility for carrying it. Chapter 15 picks up this. This is when they're finally bringing it in the right way. Then David said, "None ought to carry the ark of God but the Levites. For them hath the Lord chosen to carry the ark of God and to minister unto him forever." David did his homework, and now he brings it. He's holding up the warning sign. And so poor Uzzah, that they got zapped with that. So anyways, the ark is brought to Jerusalem. God will bless David. 1 Chronicles 16. I'm not going to read all that through 37. It is a psalm, and it's a psalm of thanksgiving. And he teaches the people the mercy of God, the sacred ark of Jehovah. If someone wants to read that, my nose is going to let me do it, but that's a good reading assignment. Moving on, we see the covenant of the Lord. Again, it pleased God to choose out of the race one nation, that is the nation of Israel, and out of that nation one tribe, Judah, and then out of that tribe one family, the house of David, or Jesse moving on down, to make him a wonderful covenant. Well, the covenant will be made with David. We see that in Samuel, and we'll get a reminder of that. 1 Chronicles 17, 7 through 15. Let's go ahead and read that.
Now therefore thus shalt thou say unto my servant David, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I took thee from the sheepcote, even from following the sheep, that thou shouldest be ruler over my people Israel. And I have been with thee whithersoever thou hast walked, and have cut off all thine enemies from before thee, and have made thee a name like the name of the great men that are in the earth. Also I will ordain a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, and they shall dwell in their place, and shall be moved no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness waste them any more, as at the beginning. And since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel. Moreover, I will subdue all thine enemies. Furthermore, I tell thee that the Lord will build thee a house. And it shall come to pass, when thy days be expired, that thou must go to be with thy fathers, that I will raise up thy seed after thee, which shall be of thy sons, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build me a house, and I will establish his throne forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. And I will not take my mercy away from him, as I took it from him that was before thee. But I will settle him in mine house and in my kingdom forever, and his throne shall be established forevermore. According to all these words, and according to all this vision, so did Nathan speak unto David.
So, promise of a Messiah, a promise of that eternal kingship, and reminded there. So we see, moving on to chapters 18 through 20, we see the divine implementation of that covenant when David later fell to the strategy of Satan. Chapter 21, we'll get a quick peek at that. God overruled and that led to the fixing of the spot where the future temple was to stand. And that was going to be, David would ask for the nation to be counted. It was a time of pride, and David fell to that. But God would send an end to that destruction. And so we're asked to do this. Compare 1 Chronicles 21:28 with 2 Chronicles 3:1. So 1 Chronicles 21:28 says, "At that time when David saw the Lord had answered him in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite, then he sacrificed there." Anyone want to jump in on 2 Chronicles 3:1?
Then Solomon began to build the house of the Lord at Jerusalem in Mount Moriah, where the Lord appeared unto David his father, in the place that David had prepared for the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite.
Yep. So we'll see that tie together, that David does everything he can, as we'll find, even in procuring a place for the temple. And Solomon will get to build on it. So the temple of the Lord, chapters 20 through to 29, we'll find out, yes, David was not allowed to build the temple. He was a man of war. God did not want a man of war to be the one whose name was associated with the temple. He wanted a man of peace. And Solomon will basically reign in peace. God will establish that peace around the nation through David and his efforts. And I like the use of the word "I." That passage you read, Stephen, is a good passage where we see who's doing the talking and all the things that God did. Very powerful. But as we'll see what David will do and what he'll secure and set up, he'll procure and line up for the materials to come, wood and stone and all the stuff he's going to need in chapter 22. Chapter 23, the Levites will be set up in courses, and they'll be divided up into their roles, responsibilities, and basically the marching orders will be set up. Solomon won't have to worry about it a bit. David was quite a strategist and a planner, the priests, and all the roles and the functions of the priests and how they would divide up the responsibility. That they would come down twice a year and to fulfill their allotted time of service. And again, this is where we find in the New Testament one of those wonderful things that in the birth of John the Baptist, we get a timing, because it was, we'll find that good old Zechariah was of the sub-tribe of Abia, the course of Abia. And that will pertain to a particular time of the year. If that time of year stayed fixed after the temple was destroyed and reestablished, all that. But if they held to that, then we know very closely within the 2 times of year that he would have been serving there. And then I say that because you can take that and do a forward pass through the birth cycle and come to Christmas, by the way, as a proper date for Christmas. I know somebody wants to refute it, but you can get a good answer. You get an answer that ends at Christmas that way. I'll leave that alone. That's not, well, way too deep there. But I do say those little tidbits that come out. The singers, the porters, etc., they'll all be lined up with their jobs and responsibilities. The man in charge, and then David himself will charge Solomon and the nation in chapters 28 and 29. He not only charges Solomon, but he charges all the princes and the leaders of the nation to get behind Solomon. He helped Solomon be successful. And no one is left off the hook. So the central message of both books of Chronicles is the house of the Lord. We can see the importance of that theme in 1 Chronicles 17:10. 1 Chronicles 17:10. Let's go there. Well, he gives me the verse. And the Lord will build thee a house. But let's get the context there.
And since the time I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, moreover, I will subdue them in all thine enemies. Furthermore, I tell thee that the house will build thee a house.
So, it's not so much that that the Lord needed a house. The Lord's going to build David a house, but there's going to be another house built. It will be for the Lord. So that really the focus there is building David's house, and it's going to stand. All right. Now we come to 2 Chronicles, which has a glorious opening and a terrible ending. Well, it's sort of glorious.
Isn't that a bit like the whole of the history of the kings anyway? Start off great, and they end up doing evil in the sight of the Lord.
Most of them.
True.
Not all of them.
No,
There's a few.
A couple.
There's a few. Was it like 7 out of the north or out of the south are good kings? Rough number, we have to double check that one. Okay, so here we have the book of 2 Chronicles. So in these chapters, we see the national moral significance of Solomon's reign. Solomon was promised wisdom, wealth, and power, and he received them. He was promised a length of days. 40 years is a very long time to be king, if he would walk with God. 1 Kings 3:13 and 14. I guess he wants us to read that. 1 Kings 3:13 and 14.
Also given thee that which thou hast not asked, both riches and honour, so that there shall not be any among the kings like unto thee all thy days. And if thou wilt walk in my ways, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as thy father David did walk, then I will lengthen thy days.
And again, this was one thing that was said and forgotten. The king was supposed to basically write themselves a copy of the law. So they would not only know it, they know it by hearing it, they know it by writing it. And surely they should have been reading it. But this he forfeited, and he died after 59 years. There's an outline of 1 Kings 1 through 11. I'm not going to go through that. We've already covered the building of the temple, so we need not speak of that. We should point out in 2 Chronicles 7:14, as God's promise to Solomon and to us. Well, it's 2 Chronicles 7:14. Okay, yeah, I know where we're going. We know that verse. Mm-hmm. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray. 7:14. 1 Chronicles?
2 Chronicles.
2 Chronicles, I'm sorry.
If my people which are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn away from their wicked ways, then I will hear that from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land.
Okay, is that a promise to us?
This is one of those, who's he talking to? He's talking to Israel here. I know Christians love this as a generic promise. We can say we're his people, in a sense, but the land and the people is inextricably linked. Us Gentiles, and if you're a Jew here, then it's different, but us Gentiles, I'm going to put my foot down in this. We're not linked to the land. I don't think we're necessarily guaranteed a promise. The promise we have is in Christ, and lo, I'll be with you always. And we're going to see trials, but basically, don't be discouraged. I've overcome the world. We're going to see temptations. We're going to see trials, tribulations. Are there good principles here? Absolutely. Here's why I react to this thusly. There's a theological system which says it's basically the Reformed, it's the covenant position that Israel has passed from the scene, they've been replaced, and the church now receives all the promises of Israel. Israel has been, yes, they're been set aside for a time, they're going to be grafted back in, and we're going to see them. That's the whole purpose of the judgment that we're going to see in the book of Revelation. They're going to be grafted back in. Because why? They rejected their Messiah. The word has been handed over to the Gentiles to propagate, to be the ones that tell the world about God right now. And his people are in rebellion. So, but the Reformed folks will look at a lot of the Old Testament promises and say, well, how do they apply to us? Because we're now Israel. No, we aren't Israel. We're distinct from Israel. Never do we see the church as standing alone and Israel is nowhere. Or do we see that Israel has become the church? We just never see that in the Bible. So that's why Mary asked the question, Are there good principles in here? Yes, there's absolutely good principles. If we are, when we talk about this in preaching, if you're experiencing personal trials, we don't understand why it's coming, one ought to be get right with God. Is there something you need to confess and to be forgiven of? Is he getting your attention? Is he chastising you like the Father would, Hebrews 12? Or is it you're suffering for your growth's sake, you're suffering for a future ministry, you're suffering for a unique testimony to people to have gone through something with God, to be able to encourage other people that are going through something with God, or you're suffering just for the name of Christ for being called a Christian. All those are legitimate reasons why we can suffer. When you start to look at suffering, it's a big subject. But to say that that's the general answer. If we've turned away from them, yes, and we need to turn back to them. But again, the promise for the land, I don't see how it applies to Gentiles. Will God probably bless our land in some way? Certainly, that we would be able to be taken care of if that's His will at that time. But we could suffer, and just for anything more than His sake in that testimony. So that's a Dave Campbell position. I overreact a little bit to Calvinism sometimes because I've seen some abuses in it. There's some great Calvinists out there preaching really solid things. But when we get in this little area here, we need to be careful when we read the Old Testament promises and understand the ones that really do apply to believers of all ages, and others that may be for believers that are Jews. That there's unique promises to Jews. Okay. And someone will probably write me and contact me and straighten me out. Good. About time. So where were we? We are 1 Chronicles. So there we go. 2 Chronicles 7:14. Read the underline. Yep, and underline this verse. So Judah's history to the captivity, chapters 10 through 36. The preceding chapters, both Chronicles. There's been has risen up a throne, founded a divine covenant. Yes, there's a temple founded by divine guidance. And the throne and the temple were to uphold the glory of each other. And by the way, we already talked about the king, but a condition of great apostasy develops in which the throne becomes the worst enemy of the temple. It even starts in Solomon's time. He starts to set up little thrones and idols and things, idols for his wives to worship. So a condition of great apostasy develops in which the throne becomes the worst enemy of the temple, and one must go, and it had to be the throne. It's an interesting way to look at it. There are 20 kings over Judah, from Rehoboam to Zedekiah. And thus, the captivity, the exile, and the suspension of the throne of David. Then the temple is allowed to be burned, 2 Chronicles 36:19 and 2 Kings 25:9. But then we have this wonderful prophecy from Jeremiah concerning all this, that it's not just punitive, that there's something coming up. So we go to Jeremiah, Isaiah, Jeremiah 25:9. Page 25:9. And behold, make sure I'm in the right place, 9 through 12. And behold, I will send and take all the families of the north, saith the Lord, and Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant, and I will bring them against this land, and against the inhabitants thereof, and against all these nations round about, and will utterly destroy them, and make them an astonishment and a hissing, in perpetual desolations. Moreover, I will take from them the voice of mirth, and the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom, and the voice of the bride, the sound of the millstones, and the light of the candle. And this whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment. These nations shall serve the king in Babylon 70 years. And it shall come to pass, when 70 years are accomplished, that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith the Lord, for their iniquity in the land of the Chaldeans, and I will make it perpetual desolations. So it's interesting, God uses them to punish Israel. And boy, it just seems if they had worshipped that God that gave the victory over Israel, what he could have done with them, but they don't. They get proud in their imaginations. That's the story of mankind since the garden. But after 70 years, so we know there's going to be a 70-year period of time, and then they will be released. So the two books of Chronicles, we have the full historical view of the Davidic monarchy. In it, we see the high calling, the great blessing, and ill doing, and bad ending, with a great little synopsis. When a king and a people honored God, there was peace, there was prosperity. Whereas when they were unfaithful to God, there was adversity. So the truth for us to learn, once again, from these books is Galatians 6:7. You would have Galatians 6:7 turned, looks like.
Do not be deceived, God is not mocked.
Yep.
For whatever a man sows, he will also reap.
That's how we also read. Yep. Dr. J.H. Moulton said there could be no greater exercise in the study of historic scripture than to compare the two divisions of the Bible in this matter, Chronicles with Samuel with Samuel and Kings, and the treatment of the same incidents. And again, we see that with David. We see he brings the ark to Jerusalem. Poor guy gets that. But on the flip side, we see the same event, but we see that when he brings it back in, that they do it the proper way, and that he has learned. And many other things. So again, when you're reading in one section, see if it has coverage in the other section. That's really about as good as you're going to get as an exegesis through this at a high level. It was up to the reader to read all the details and the specific events. So what is a chronicle?
An order of events.
An order of events. Good enough. Yep. So what is the central message of Chronicles?
Is it about the temple?
That's I guess he says that's the central message. Yep, it is about the temple. Why the genealogies in the first 9 chapters? You can use his answer, and you can use mine if you want to get extra points.
Because you've got to know what's going on in order to go forward.
I like that. Yep. You need to know your place in the world.
Is that the extra point?
What's that?
Is that the extra point?
You get a gold star today. I've all had gold stars, but you just earned it. All right. When was the anointed king? Who was the anointed king of 1 Chronicles, and who was anointed king of 2 Chronicles?
David's 1 Chronicles, isn't he?
Saul in 1 Chronicles.
So,
Yeah, 1 Chronicles is David. Yeah, that's yep. Yeah. 2 Chronicles.
Solomon.
Solomon, yeah. And did David build the temple?
No.
Why? 1 Chronicles 28:2. It's interesting. You do not, when you're reading Kings, you don't get that answer until Chronicles 28:2. So he's like, well, you don't get to build it. Why? Well, you got to keep reading the story, and you get that little tidbit to understand Kings with. So we set a land speed record on this one, but this is probably one of the easier things to do because it is.
Well,
It's a refocusing of what we've already studied.
it's an old groundwork.
It even gets easier because we only follow the southern kingdoms. The southern kingdom, well, it's kingdom because it's Judah and Benjamin, but really one kingdom. And but those frightening words, until there was no remedy. Let's be part of the remedy. So our assignment for next week, read Ezra and Nehemiah. We're going to cover both of the week. 4 chapters each day, that'd be good. Again, if you can't do that, he gives you a subset to read. Review our studies of the Chronicles. From your notes, mark your Bible with the notes taken in the class and be present. Next Lord Day with your Bible and notebook ready to go. Good. Short and sweet. I like it.
Thank you.
Yeah, the big part of at least the aha when I went through the detailed study was that parcel that was the first 9 chapters. There's 9 chapters of it, but you wade through it, you can see the patterns that are starting to develop. You really got to diagram it though, or you get lost. Yeah, but yes, I mean, unanswered question: why do tribes disappear? Probably they weren't a whole lot left of them, but anyways, they don't stop and answer why.
So these days, are there people, there must be people who can trace their genealogy back to the original 12 tribes?
I would be surprised if anyone could trace it back to the original 12. It might be. The original 2, you might be able to trace yourself to tribe of Judah and possibly Benjamin, because you have that continuity beyond the exile. It was interesting. Paula sent me a thing out of Micah about God's going to call the nations back one day, and it's still unfulfilled when he's talking about the. He says Israel, and for Micah to speak of Israel is the northern kingdom. They still haven't been called back. They're still dispersed. So they never had that rejoining. Although not all of Judah is going to come back, a bunch of it did. So they would have that identity. Levites would come back by name. Now, by the way, just a little bit of Hebrew. If you have the name Cohen, if your name is Cohen, it means priest. And so if you're a proper Cohen, then you can probably, hopefully, unless someone just made it up at some point in line, that you were of one of the priestly distinctions there. So an interesting thing there. But how do they trace the there are those that keep the genealogies, and that's when they came back. They were very careful in reseeding those that were going to do the temple worship. And even some, you'll see it's kind of implicit. Some came back and said, "Hey, we're ready to go serve again." It's like, we have no record of you. You're not able to serve. But the whole thing is with those that are being called out, God knows who it is. And whether the people know who they are or not, I think God will be able to call those and let them know. I mean, what a wonderful thing to get a dream one day, and it's like, you're one of my elect. You need to start making my way over to Jerusalem. There's going to be 12,000 out of your tribe. You're the tribe of Benjamin, and you're the tribe of Ephraim. And you guys need to get over there because this thing's going down. I don't know how God will do it. But there's going to be 12,000 saved out of each tribe. So he'll know where they are. He knows where they are.
Cool.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you. See you guys next week.